The Massachusetts Metropolitan District Water Supply Commission Photograph Collection 1927 to 1947 Digital Access Project 2018 to 2020 and ongoing. The following is a presentation that was delivered to the public on February 23, 2020 at the DCR Quabbin Visitor Center, Belchertown by Sean Fisher, Archivist for the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation. In April 2020, the presentation was updated, a narration text recorded, and made available to the public during the 2020 pandemic crisis. The presentation runs about 40 minutes. Sean Fisher is the General Collections Archivist for the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation. Prior to DCR's formation in 2003, he was the Archivist for the Massachusetts Metropolitan District Commission, beginning in 1993. Sean is a graduate of the Master's Archival Management program at Simmons University Library School and of the Public History Graduate Program at Northeastern University. In his 27 years at MDC and DCR, Sean has visited the Quabbin Administration Building scores of times, cataloging its archival records. He works in DCR's Office of Cultural Resources. The Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation, DCR, Division of Water Supply Protection, Office of Watershed Management, and the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority, MWRA, currently supply drinking water to 51 communities, 3 million people, and 5,500 industrial users, primarily in the metropolitan Boston area. DCR is responsible for collection and safe storage of the source water, protection of reservoir water quality, and management of the watersheds. MWRA is responsible for drinking water treatment and distribution, as well as financing the watershed management budget through the Water Supply Protection Trust. Quabbin Reservoir, the Ware River, and the Wachusett Reservoir are the active water supply sources for the metropolitan Boston water system. Every aspect of this water supply system was considered an engineering marvel at the time of its construction. Both Wachusett and Quabbin reservoirs were the largest man-made reservoirs in the world upon their completion. DCR Watershed Management currently manages over 100,000 acres of land owned in fee by the Commonwealth, specifically for water supply protection. The Office of Watershed Management also holds watershed preservation restrictions on more than 8,000 acres of privately held land. Between 1895 and 1947, 4 related state agencies within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts created about 26,000 unique photographic images of the real estate takings for and construction of the water supply and distribution system for metropolitan Boston. 2 official print copies were made in addition to other copies for staff use. In total, nearly 100,000 images in negative and print format were potentially created. Briefly, between 1895 and 1921, the Metropolitan Water Board and its successors, the Metropolitan Water and Sewage Board, and the Metropolitan District Commission's Water Division, created 7,672 sequentially numbered photographs, with the bulk of them, 6,000, created prior to 1907. Known as the Metropolitan Waterworks System, these photographs document the real estate takings for and construction and operations of the Wachusett Reservoir, Wachusett Dam, Wachusett Aqueduct, Sudbury Reservoir, Sudbury Dam, Weston Aqueduct, Weston Reservoir, and the expansion of a water supply distribution system throughout metropolitan Boston, including pipelines, pumping stations, reservoirs, and standpipes. The images of real estate takings include residential homes and buildings, businesses, mills, railroad stations, schools, churches, and cemeteries. These images represent the Metropolitan Waterworks system prior to the 1926 to 1940 expansion of that system that included the construction of the Quabbin Reservoir. These images mostly derive from 7,839 glass plate photographic negatives that survive today, along with each numbered photo print. By 1985, this photograph collection had been split across 7 different organizations, including 3 state agencies, 1 federal museum, 2 local historical societies, and 1 public library. In 2000, I initiated a project to archivally preserve and catalog each of these images and reconstitute the full collection at the Massachusetts State Archives. With the assistance of the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority and its now retired librarian, Rebecca Kenny, we jointly managed a digital access project between 2012 and 2014 to use the relatively new Digital Commonwealth and Boston Public Library Digital Services process to create professional digital images of the photos and provide online access to them. This collection went online in 2014 with supplemental photos in 2015. I began planning for the same digital access project for the state-created Quabbin Reservoir project photographs in 2014, encompassing the Swift River and Ware River watersheds. Whereas the earlier collection became divided between 7 entities, for official Quabbin photographs, there are only 3: DCR, the Massachusetts State Archives, and the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority. In 2014, I inventoried nearly all state-created Quabbin photos at our 3 agencies, with additional inventorying in 2019. Here is the worksheet for the Swift River real estate photo volumes, followed by the worksheet for the cemeteries photo volumes. It is easier to see here the separate columns for the volumes at 2 of the repositories. Let me dispel a common myth of Massachusetts 20th century history. The Metropolitan District Commission, the MDC, did not construct Quabbin Reservoir. Yes, the MDC Water Division was a major player in the planning for the Quabbin project during the early 1920s as the operator of the system. However, the legislature decided to authorize a new state agency to oversee the capital construction and then turn the new water supply infrastructure over to the MDC Water Division to operate. The new agency was called the Metropolitan District Water Supply Commission, established in 1926. By legislation, its chairman was the MDC Commissioner, thus linking the 2 agencies. This new agency lasted until 1947. In a May 6, 1927 internal memo, Chief Engineer Windsor recommends the taking of photos of buildings and cemeteries in the Swift River Valley. Windsor was a young engineer when he worked for the Metropolitan Water Board on the Wachusett project in the late 1890s, and likely it was here that he witnessed firsthand the value of real estate and construction photography in his profession. One month later, in June 1927, based on employment applications coming in, he recommends a Mark L. Dodd as photographer and outlines the photo work and sets the standard for the use of 5x7 images. In July, the camera is ordered, along with a photo printing and developing outfit. The Second Water Supply Commission Annual Report for 1927 includes the first reference to real estate photos being taken in the Swift River Valley. Like the Metropolitan Waterworks, the photographs were mostly taken by low-level engineers employed by the Commission and pressed into photographic service, though Dodd and another photographer that followed him, Burbank, did have previous photography experience. Surviving are employee history cards for Water Supply Commission staff. Here are some cards for the photographers. And note that none of them have a job classification as photographer. Their classification is all related to engineering. The employment applications for some employees also survive in the archives, including for some photographers. It is truly amazing such documentation survives to help tell this story and give life to the names on the photographs. There were about 10 major engineering photographers, 8 of whom took photos in the Swift River Real Estate, Quabbin General Engineering, cemeteries, and Quabbin Park cemetery sets. Unlike the Metropolitan Waterworks, which internumbered real estate photos with construction photos, mixing them together, the Water Supply Commission divided its photographic documentation into 5 main sets, all with their own sequential numbering system. Real estate for Swift River Watershed, real estate for Ware River Watershed, cemeteries for Swift River Watershed, Quabbin Park Cemetery, and contract construction. The Water Supply Commission was also an early adapter to using aerial photography as a new means of visual documentation, and used it at 4 different intervals, each with its own numbering system. In a 1930 internal memo, Chief Engineer Windsor outlines the numbering style for each photo set. An agency darkroom was created in what was still Enfield, first in downtown Enfield at the Felton and Bartlett blocks through 1928, then beginning in 1930 at the agency's joint chemical, soil, and photo laboratories in a former house called the Barlow House. A single 5x7 view camera was used. A second camera was not purchased until 1937. Its arrival is documented in a photographer's diary. Here are examples of Water Supply Commission equipment inventories that include cameras from 1931, 1937, and 1945. All Water Supply Commission photographs share a similar style. They are 5 by 7 in size. Each image is captioned across the bottom, called titling by the photographers. Each image is numbered in the lower right. Nearly each caption includes the photographer's last name, also usually in the lower right. Nearly all real estate photos include a chalkboard in the image providing real estate and image information. How the chalkboard is being used is outlined in a December 30th, 1927 memo. While the caption style changes over time, it is basically consistent. For the two official subsets, the photo prints are backed with a white linen cloth and mostly stamped in red with the agency's name and Boston office mailing address. Between 1926 and 1947, there were two different addresses. The linen cloth has an extra left margin that is 2-hole punched, and 50 consecutive numbered photo prints are loosely bound with brass fasteners and covered with front and back boards, and a spine piece is added. A label is added to the front cover, providing details about the photo volume and summarized on the spine. Most importantly, the front cover label identifies the subset as for the Commission's Secretary's Office or for the Commission's Chief Engineer's Office. This is consistent with how the Metropolitan Waterworks made their official subsets a generation earlier. The Commission also created a reference subset for the Field Office, also known as the triplicate or extra copy set. These prints are not stamped on the back and have a simpler front cover label. For the real estate photos, the two official subsets were also annotated on the print with more specific real estate information. For the real estate photos, a fourth additional partial subset was created using cheaper blueprinting technology and were taken into the field by the engineers and marked up with various annotations. The image quality of the blueprint photos are not as good as standard photo prints. It should be noted here that the Commonwealth is no longer in possession of the complete set for the Swift River real estate, with many volumes missing from both the Secretary subset and the Chief Engineer subset, totaling about 5,500 photo prints missing. In fact, across all three subsets, 2 volumes are completely missing. We are hoping that as the public and other organizations see these photographs online, we will be informed of the location of the other missing photo volumes. I will make site visits and accept anonymous returns. The Secretary and Chief Engineer subsets for the cemetery's volumes survive in full. The Commission staff and engineers, contractors, and the public, mostly local residents, were also permitted to buy photos at 7 cents per print, and did so with varying degrees of quantity. These original prints have no linen cloth backing. They have the standard matte backing of the time. The engineering photographers would document their daily work in annual diaries, some of which survive in the archives. Here are a few examples. Here is the entry for number 1727, and here is that number as the photo. The entries for June 4th, 1937 shows the extensive work of a photographer in one day. The cataloging stumbling block for the Quabbin photos is the quantity, 18,000, double from the earlier generation set. While I undertook most of the cataloging for the 1895 to 1921 set, my expanded archival management duties since the 2000 creation of DCR did not allow me the time to catalog each Quabbin photo myself. Digital imaging of historic photographs requires extensive cataloging for each image. In fact, metadata cataloging takes significantly more time than the physical act of digital imaging. This is where the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority literally saved the project from endless delay. In spring 2018, NWRA librarian Karen Graham made an offer to use the library's occasional graduate school paid internship program for cataloging the Quabbin photographs, and that she had a potential candidate for the project, a current student in the Library and Archives graduate program at Simmons University. The three of us met and discussed the idea with our supervisors and met with Bpl Digital Services. On July 30th, 2018, the metadata project was up and running. We met with the State Archives senior staff in late September. In early October, we submitted a formal application to Bpl Digital Services for the project and for it to be added to their queue. Digital Commonwealth technically began in 2006 and 2007 through the statewide network of Massachusetts Regional Library Networks. With startup funding from a federal grant and through a modest annual membership fee, public libraries would submit historical photos from their local history collections, and their regional library networks would provide digital imaging services, and then host the image collections through a new web portal called Digital Commonwealth. I am not aware of the details, but this regional library digital imaging service did not last. It was replaced in 2011 by an official partnership with the Boston Public Library. The BPL began developing its own digital services program for internal use in about 2005. By 2010, it was ready to expand its services to other public libraries and archival repositories in the state. After initial startup funding from a federal grant, the program is now funded through a line item in the annual state budget called Library of the Commonwealth. Based on a sliding scale and on the size of the institution, there is an annual membership fee for institutions. For DCR, the current rate is $200. Institutions receive free digital imaging services and web hosting through the Digital Commonwealth web portal. Bpl Digital Services is the IT developer and administrator for Digital Commonwealth. However, Digital Commonwealth remains independent, registered as a 501c3 nonprofit since 2012. The Bpl Digital Services staff are comprised of professionally educated and trained archivists with specialties in digital imaging and metadata cataloging, and use state-of-the-art equipment. They are located in the lower level of the Johnson Building at BPL's Copley Square main branch. Bpl Digital Services provides the membership institutions with a metadata cataloging template in an Excel worksheet. It is the institution's responsibility in this relationship to provide the metadata cataloging for each image using the template. Our goal in the metadata cataloging phase was to start out on the simpler side using the combined cemeteries and Quabbin Park cemetery sets, totaling 2,100 images. Then Swift River Real Estate, followed by Ware River Real Estate, contract construction, and lastly aerial photography. The metadata cataloging was done by a graduate student intern in archives management working in the MWA library, co-managed by its librarian and by me. The metadata template has 137 fields, but we mostly use 35 of them. The cataloging was done in multiple phases. The Water Supply Commission had originally created typed lists of each photo set, and these survive in the archives and at DCR's Quabbin Administration Building. I created PDFs of them during the 2014 inventory. The project cataloger used the photo list to create the first draft of the metadata. This was an important step because these lists include building type that is not provided in the original photo caption. Second, the original photographic prints were borrowed from the Massachusetts Archives and from the DCR Quabbin Administration Building. The project cataloger reviewed each image and entered additional metadata. A key component of this phase was reading the image, picking out useful subjects and details within the image to create general and specific cataloging subject headings. Here, standard library and archives cataloging thesaurus tools are used, including the Getty Art and Architectural Thesaurus for land and the built environment, the Library of Congress subject headings, the Getty Thesaurus for geographic names for geographic locations, and the Library of Congress Thesaurus for graphic materials for describing the photographic object itself. Here is an example of the key fields used in the completed metadata worksheet for the Swift River real estate photo set. Here is an example of all the fields used in, for example, print number 249 in the Swift River real estate set. Here is what that same metadata looks like when the image is online. For the cemeteries and Quabbin Park cemetery sets, the two official subsets of photo prints survive today. The image quality and annotation notations on the subsets were compared, and it was determined that the chief engineer subset was the better of the two to use. For the Swift River real estate, we were forced to use the nearly complete reference triplicate subset, even though this subset has no real estate annotations on the prints. Only 9 secretary and 4 chief engineer subset volumes survive. There should be 59 volumes for each. Where there are missing prints from the triplicate subset, we drew from the surviving volumes of the 2 official subsets and from surviving original negatives. Thus, sprinkled in a few places are annotated real estate images, which will also provide the public with an example of photos which we are trying to locate and have returned. The original photos and the metadata worksheet are provided to Bpl Digital Services simultaneously. Bpl needed the photos unbound before received, so the volumes were unbound, keeping each photo volume in a folder with its front cover. The best practice imaging standard in the archival management profession is the Federal Technical Guidelines for digitizing cultural heritage materials. Here are some photos I took of the Bpl Digital Services imaging technician working on the cemetery photos. While the glass keeps the photo prints flat, the added glass layer does slightly lower the degree of image quality. You will notice that there is no flatbed scanner. It is standard practice in the archives management profession for professional digital imaging to be undertaken using a fixed digital camera from above. digital imaging room is also painted and lit in a very specific manner. Each digital image goes through post-image capture processing steps. It is Digital Services policy to take a photograph of the full image and its margins and support, if any. Nothing is cropped. After post-processing, Bpl Digital Services has metadata reviewers who, with great detail, compare the metadata with the image and the caption on the photo print, when there is one. For the quantities in the Quabbin project, this process takes months. While some basic corrections are made by the metadata reviewer, the institution is responsible for correcting most discrepancies and questions. The surviving Water Supply Commission archival records include a set of files from its photography department. Here were found folded maps of many of the cemeteries created by the Commission, laying out the cemetery lots, and these maps are annotated with the photo number for each lot. While not all photo annotated cemetery maps survive, for those that do, clearly these two should be digitized and were. Additionally, various surviving planning maps of the Quabbin Reservoir were later annotated by Commission engineers plotting the location of the cemeteries. These two were determined to be useful for the digital project. I suspect the Commission engineers did the same for the real estate photos, plotting the camera location and direction on a set of the real estate taking sheets, as indicated in a December 17, 1927 memo. However, no such plans have been located. The Metropolitan Waterworks, a generation earlier, did do this, and these plans are on Digital Commonwealth as a related collection to the photos. The Quabbin Photographs Digital Access Project is being cataloged under the Massachusetts Archives as the permanent repository of public archival records created by state agencies of the executive branch. As with the 1895 to 1921 photograph collection, the repository stated in the cataloging record for each analog, original, and digital image is the Massachusetts Archives, not DCR or MWRA. The MDC DCR are acknowledged as to where the original images came from to the state archives, and when coming from the MWRA, they too are acknowledged. In 2018, the Massachusetts State Archives launched its public online digital repository for analog to digital and for born digital electronic public archival records. As analog collections are digitized through Digital Commonwealth, Bpl Digital Services, the State Archives uploads the digital files from Bpl Digital Services to their digital repository. To date, the Quabbin Cemetery's photograph collection has been uploaded. Here, the State Archives is keeping the photo volumes grouped together digitally, a nice feature. Later, during the course of this project, DCR will be legally transferring its remaining portions of the original Quabbin Cemeteries and Swift River Real Estate photographic prints to the Massachusetts State Archives for professional level preservation for future generations. It is hard to believe that in 7 years, it will be the 100th anniversary of when this photographic documentation began. Here are my top 5 images in this photo collection, though I do have a top 100 in no particular order. Image number 249, the Harriet Hess house in Enfield Center. The house has beautiful architectural details and communicates that this was a home for a family and a community that surrounded it. Image number 1038, the Herbert Payne General Store in Enfield, with a car, with a driver, with passengers, with second floor residents, with laundry hanging out to dry. The image communicates life and action. Image number 1283, the Greenwich Village Schoolhouse. School children playing outside with 6 boys and 2 girls, and 2 boys are playing baseball. Image number 192, the A.H. Phillips General Store in North Dana. Note the year of the building, 1912. Only 16 years before this photo was taken. Finally, the 1932 image of the agency's engineers baseball team. Surviving is a key to each person, and 2 of them are staff photographers. Throughout the project, I have scoured the Water Supply Commission's photograph collections within the 3 agencies and located numerous unnumbered 5x7 commission-created photographic negatives and prints that fall within the Swift River Real Estate Quabbin General Engineering set, but for whatever reason were not selected for the bound photo volume set. These are gradually being included in the Digital Access project as addendums. The Metropolitan Waterworks did the same, and all of them that were found are included in that digital collection. Here are 2 of 27 photos taken in September 1941 by commission photographer Pike for the agency's landscape architecture consultant, Arthur Shercliffe, to review for his landscaping recommendations. And these photo prints are annotated. This 2-image panorama is of the main entrance road to the administration building complex from Route 9 before landscaping. And here is a 2018 view of the same oak tree along the left side of the road, which succumbed to gypsy moth in 2018. Here are 3 slides of the project's milestones. Here are 3 slides of some general observations of this photograph collection. This story of Massachusetts state government history could not have been told without an archives to provide the historical documentation, without an archivist to manage, preserve, catalog, and interpret these public records, and without digital imaging and web hosting services to provide worldwide online access. Through teamwork and interagency cooperation, we have accomplished many milestones, with more to go. For the Wachusett and Quabbin Reservoir water supply engineering projects, the Commonwealth took people's land to supply metropolitan Boston with water. The Commonwealth has a responsibility today to reformat its state-created photographic documentation from the analog era to our new digital society. It also has a responsibility today to provide wider access of this land-taking and engineering photographic documentation for the family descendants who own that land and for the communities that remain impacted by the Commonwealth's water supply infrastructure within that community. It is their history too. The archival photographs in this online collection and the supporting archival documentation in this presentation are excellent educational tools for the citizens of the Commonwealth. Here are 4 slides listing the staff teams associated with this digital access project. Finally, here is a slide of my contact information. Thank you.